YouTube, what's going on? It's been a minute since we did a mock, like a legitimate mock draft, and I was feeling it. So let's do another one because it's been a while. So starting off with the first pick, um, it's Trevor Lawrence. Moving on. Number two, we have the Jets, who, it's seeming right now like they are planning to move on from Sam Darnold, but it's probably actually going to be after the draft that they trade him, which is kind of dumb to me. Because then at best you're getting a first round next year. But they've said that they're going to go out to some of their guys' pro days and stuff. And if you're so iffy on taking a quarterback that you want to go to their pro days, then maybe they are trying to stick with Darnold. I don't think they are, though. I think they probably have in mind who they're going to take. And, I just think Zach Wilson has to be the pick here. If they don't get Deshaun Watson, Zach Wilson has to be the pick. I see the argument for Justin Fields. Obviously he's had more of a solid career at the collegiate level. Maybe not better than Zach Wilson, because Zach Wilson had a crazy year this year. But I just don't see the point in taking a player that plays pretty much exactly like Sam Darnold. Justin Fields is definitely more accurate, and they have some different issues, but for the most part, they're very similar quarterbacks in the way where they're really 1-2 reads, and then if nothing's there, they just run. Whereas Zach Wilson, like, my comp for him is Deshaun Watson, because that's basically who he is, except he has a stronger arm, but he's not as good at extending plays, still great at extending plays. The dude is electric. I think it's a changeup that the Jets could really use, and I think he'll be a great quarterback for them. Penei Sewell, obviously, is also another, considerable pick there, because he's such an amazing tackle, but I do think Zach Wilson is the direction to go there for the Jets. Then at number 3, we have the Dolphins, who are pretty easily going to take Penei Sewell here. For a while, I had them taking a receiver, which I still very much see. But taking Penei Sewell it takes that offense to the next level. Like, truly it does, because then you can probably put Penei Sewell there at left tackle, switch Austin Jackson over to right tackle, and stick Robert Hunt there in at right guard, which is where I think he belongs. And you have an elite offensive line right there, I think. They already weren't that bad last year, but then you add a guy like Sewell, it's going to make Tagovailoa's job so much easier. He's going to have more time to throw, obviously. And, I just don't really see the hate for Sewell. There are some people that truly think he's just this raw prospect that is way overhyped, and some people say he's worse than Slater, and I just don't agree at all. It's just Penei Sewell, I've heard people say his footwork needs a lot of work. I don't understand that at all, because his footwork is insane. He's incredibly athletic for a tackle, and he's just quite simply the best tackle in the draft since, think Eric Fisher or Laramie Tunsil, and probably is going to be better than those guys, which is really scary. So I think it's a good pick here for the Dolphins. Then at number 4, we have the Falcons. A lot of people are giving different picks here. Kyle Pitts. I've seen some people give a receiver here, actually, Penei Sewell at this spot. The pick is Justin Fields. I don't see any other way to go. I don't think a lot of people don't seem to get why, because people want to look at it and say, well, they have Matt Ryan. What are they going to do with Matt Ryan? But why do they have to move on from Matt Ryan? Take a second and think. How often over the next 2-3 years are the Falcons going to have a top 4 pick? And at that number 4 pick, they can get a quarterback that is normally your number 1 overall pick, if not for guys like Wilson and Lawrence this year. They're never going to be in this good of a situation again. And, Fields has his issues, but that's even more of an amazing situation for him, because you can sit him for a year or 2 behind Matt Ryan to learn the game and fix his issues and not stare down his targets and throw the ball if it's there. Matt Ryan doesn't struggle with any of that. And then after maybe 2 years, you trade off Matt Ryan, or maybe you can get him to restructure something, but you give Justin Fields 2 years to learn, come into that offense, he's going to be a really, really, really good quarterback. I think it's the perfect situation, and if they go anywhere other than Fields, or if Wilson somehow falls here, I think it's a mistake for them. Then we have the Bengals at number 5, and the Bengals sadly miss out on Penei Sewell here. However, I am not a believer that they should be taking any of these tackles this high. If you watch me, I do not like Rashawn Slater even close. Like, it's not even a thought to take him at 5. The only guy I would consider taking here at 5 is Christian Darrisaw, and I really do like Christian Darrisaw. This kid has a ton of upside. I still don't think he's number 5 overall worthy. Kid that is number 5 overall worthy is Ja'Marr Chase. I feel like if Penei Sewell isn't there, the pick has to be a receiver. Even though they already have great receiving talent, and I get, Jalen Waddle is, a speed demon. He's really good, obviously. He was on track to have a fantastic year. Devontae Smith, obviously was a Heisman winner. Just if you get the ball in his hands, he's one of the most dangerous players on the field. But Ja'Marr Chase makes way more sense for 2 reasons. Number one, they're losing A.J. Green more than likely. And after losing A.J. Green, your top 2 receivers are T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is maybe the best slot receiver in football, if not the best, one of the best. So that's great. You have T. Higgins on one side who can, do a good amount of stuff. But especially when you're losing a guy like A.J. Green, if you can get kind of that big, elite, number 1 receiver, jump ball guy like Ja'Marr Chase is, I think that's the right pick, as well as the obvious connection of Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase with LSU. Ja'Marr Chase had that, amazing season when Joe Burrow was there. So I just think the connection, the need, I think it's all too well. If Penei Sewell does fall here, that definitely has to be the pick. But if Penei Sewell isn't here in this case, Ja'Marr Chase is definitely the right pick. Then at number 6, we have the Eagles. And fresh off of trading Carson Wentz, there's a lot of talk of them potentially taking a quarterback. And at this point, that would either mean Mac Jones or Trey Lance. Now, personally, I like Mac Jones a lot more than Trey Lance. However, Trey Lance definitely would fit better with the Eagles than Mac Jones would, by far. But I don't think quarterback just makes enough sense. I don't see the need to trade off your number 1 overall pick from just a few years ago, especially after taking him from North Dakota State, and then go draft another North Dakota State quarterback. That doesn't make sense to me. Jalen Hurts showed some really nice stuff. I would definitely be sticking with him right now. And if that case, I want to build around him. And, the obvious pick at this point would be, either Caleb Farley or one of these receiving threats. But if I'm being honest, out of these 4 guys, I never really gave Kyle Pitts this high before, but Kyle Pitts makes a lot of sense here. Kyle Pitts is one of the most, intriguing and just one of the best receiving prospects that we've ever seen before. I've said it before, but this guy has the athleticism of a Kenny Golladay, with the catching of an Odell, with the size of a Gronkowski, with the blocking of a Tony Gonzalez. Like, this dude is the whole package. If you're a team like the Eagles that really, more than draft for need, you just got to go with the best player available. Kyle Pitts is by far the best player available at that spot. And I think it makes a lot of sense to build around Jalen Hurts. And don't look at that tight end label and just think, oh, he's a tight end. We already have Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. First off, Zach Ertz is most likely being traded pretty soon. Second off, honestly, they should list him as a receiver because that's what he is. Not even just a wide receiver, just a receiver. So this dude's a lot more than a tight end. Even so, you can use 2 tight end sets, obviously, but he is an amazing prospect, and this is a great pick for the Eagles, I think. Lions at number 7. Lions, I took a quarterback here last time because Justin Fields fell. I thought maybe taking a quarterback was better because I don't see Jared Goff as the long-term guy. He's just really declined in play recently, and I don't think that's going to be retributed with the Lions of all teams. So I do think the correct pick here is definitely going to be one of these receivers, but then it does come down to which one between Waddle and Smith. If you look at both of them, Jalen Waddle is much more of, can be your number 1 guy, better in the jump ball, obviously, speed demon, like I said earlier. Devontae Smith, on the other hand, is the guy on your offense that you're going to design plays to go to. So at first glance, when you look at that offense with, TJ Hawkinson and Kenny Golladay, Devontae Smith looks like the obvious pick because you already have your number one jump ball receiver. Problem is, more than likely, Kenny Golladay is there for at most one more year. That's if they franchise tag him. So, once Golladay is gone, having just Devontae Smith as your only good receiver, I don't think that's going to work well at all. I think a team that's built, unless you're Alabama, a team built around a guy like Devontae Smith, I feel like would just fail miserably. So I do think Jalen Waddle is the much more sensible pick here. In all reality, Jalen Waddle could be the first receiver off the board. It's kind of what happened with Henry Ruggs last year, where a lot of people thought it would be either Jeudy or Lamb, and then it ended up being Ruggs because of his speed. I don't think the Bengals would take Waddle over Chase, especially just because, again, the LSU connection. But, I do think Jalen Waddle, though, does make more sense here for the Lions, and I like the pick. Panthers at number 8. The Panthers here, Caleb Farley is a strong consideration here. I would really love the idea of Micah Parsons or JOK on this defense for the Panthers. With Curtis Smith leaving, maybe you look at Devontae Smith, but the pick does have to be a quarterback. And looking between Trey Lance and Mac Jones, although, like I said earlier, I do have Mac Jones above Trey Lance. I think he'll be much better than Trey Lance. I think, he has more talent than Trey Lance. He's more NFL ready than Trey Lance by far. That's not even an argument. Trey Lance is the better fit here for the Panthers. He really does fit the way they like to run their offense. If you look at the way he played for North Dakota State, he, either chucked it deep, handed the ball off, or ran it himself with a mix of throwing to his running backs. That's almost exactly what the Panthers do, especially when they have guys like Christian McCaffrey and stuff. Now, realistically, the Panthers can be the team that ends up trading for Deshaun Watson, so then obviously they wouldn't have his pick. But, between him and Mac Jones, like I said, I do think Mac Jones is a much better quarterback, and I do think he will end up being better than Lance, but Lance is by far the better fit for the Panthers. And with Lance, he's probably the most boomer bust prospect in this class for me because his potential is Josh Allen, and we've all seen what Josh Allen can do, but his floor is like bust, like bad time, like mega time bust. So there's definitely a risk you're taking with this. I do think it fits well with Matt Rule's offense, and I do like the fit overall. I think it's a risk worth taking. I would not be taking Trey Lance this high personally, but I think with the Panthers and between the two, it makes more sense. Then at number 9, we have the Broncos, and the Broncos here, Caleb Farley is obviously in consideration here, as well as Patrick Surtain. Mac Jones is also in consideration for me here. People are finally starting to realize that Mac Jones is going to go a lot higher than 33 and a lot higher than a lot of other people have him. I took Mac Jones as high as 9 one time, and I got flamed for it, but it's a realistic, situation because a lot of teams are higher on the Mac Jones than people are. And I was with the teams though, because I do think Mac Jones will be solid in the NFL. However, it does seem like the Broncos are wanting to stick with Drew Lock right now. They'll probably just sign a guy like Andy Dalton or someone, which they do in my mock offseason for the Broncos. Came out yesterday if you want to go check that out. So I do think the best pick here is going to be Micah Parsons. I love the fit of Micah Parsons with the Broncos. If you take a second and think of what Micah Parsons can do for you, he can play linebacker, which is a need for the Broncos. He can play edge rusher, outside linebacker, edge rusher. The Broncos are probably going to cut Von Miller, so he fills that need. He can also play very good as a box safety, down in the box like Kareem Jackson does. Kareem Jackson is getting older, so that fills a need too. Micah Parsons, it's maybe a bit of a stretch, but can even go to play some corner for you, which is a need for the Broncos. Not to mention, I haven't even mentioned the fact yet that I think this is just the exact perfect guy that Vic Fangio would love to have in his defense. I just think Micah Parsons in a Fangio defense would be extremely scary. He fills so many needs for the Broncos that, corner makes sense here, obviously. Micah Parsons makes a lot more sense. Then at 10, we have the Cowboys. And, I mean, this is a really easy pick for me. Caleb Farley, easily going to go here. I used to give Patrick Surtain to the Cowboys a lot, but, I mean, I'm kind of done giving Surtain to the Cowboys just because he's a better fit. Farley is the best corner in the class, and I'm kind of done thinking about that. I've kind of solidified him as my number one corner. Didn't play this year, obviously, but a couple of years ago now with Virginia Tech, he had an amazing year. I mean, he was truly shut down. He's really speedy as well. He has an extremely well set of tools to use. I do understand pairing Patrick Surtain back with Trevon Diggs. I think that would be great. I do think Patrick Surtain is more NFL ready. But I don't think Caleb Farley, I don't think his injuries are going to be a concern in the NFL. I do think he's the best corner in this class, and it makes the most sense for the Cowboys. Then at number 11, we have the Giants. And if Devontae Smith lasts here, I'm not even going to look anywhere else because it just makes too much sense. I mean, I think the offense just needs to focus on, who's the best offensive player available. If it's Kyle Pitts somehow lands there, you take Kyle Pitts. If Jalen Waddle somehow lands there, you take Jalen Waddle. The offensive line needs some help, obviously, yes. So it's a potential to take, like a Rashawn Slater or a Christian Darrisaw here. But again, just if Devontae Smith lasts to 11 for the Giants, I think they've got to take him. They already have players on that receiving core too. I mean, Evan Ingram had a horrible year by his normal standards, but he's still a competent tight end at the least. Darius Slayton secretly had a really, really good year. Sterling Shepard's not majorly underrated, but I do think people underestimate his skill a little bit. So getting a guy like Devontae Smith on that offense, if Danny Dimes fails with a guy like Smith, then it's time to move on. I still think he deserves another year to show what he's got. Kind of same with like Drew Lock. So, I think they should give him another year. Give him a great receiver like this, and we'll see what he can do. Then the Vikings at number 12. And the Vikings, I see, a pretty popular pick here is Rashawn Slater. And I definitely get it. I understand that for sure. There's a good chance they lose Trent Williams, honestly. They can keep him, but there is a good chance he leaves in free agency. And, I've spoken before about how their interior offensive line is really, really bad. But, I still think that 12 is way too high for Slater. And I think Surtain is just such a good corner that I feel like you've got to take him there. If you compare Surtain up with, like, Jason Verrett, since Richard Sherman's probably leaving, I think that's an amazing pairing. Patrick Surtain, although I don't think he's the best corner in this class, he is still really, really good. I mean, he was also shut down for Alabama whenever he played. I think he allowed technically less than every 1 in 3 plays. It was like a 28% of completion allowance or whatever. So he was really, really solid. He's great in zone as well as man. I think he'd fit really nicely with the 49ers defense. And yeah, I think with Jason Verrett, again, he'd be really good. Then we have the Chargers at 13. And Kwity Paye does make a good amount of sense here. Because he can really play that, defensive end or that outside linebacker spot for them since they kind of have two holes there. Again, I've said that they like that Nwosu guy, but I still do think that the pick definitely does have to be offensive line, and it's not Rashawn Slater because he's not my number 2 tackle. That would be Christian Darrisaw. Christian Darrisaw is a special talent. The dude has incredible size and his size is another guy that, just for his size is extremely athletic and quick in his game. He would easily go in at that left tackle position and he'd be a rock for them. And they just got to make sure they protect Justin Herbert, make sure what happened to Joe Burrow doesn't happen to him. And, they're on track right now to truly be competing for a Super Bowl because of how well their team is built. And getting a guy like Darrisaw to man that offensive line is really good for them. Then at 14, we have the Vikings. And, Rashawn Slater is yet again another popular pick here. But I really don't see another pick than Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye is like, it was weird because people were like super, super hot on him for a while, and then people got like really cold, and now people are kind of back up hot again. I don't know why they ever got cold. I mean, this dude is really, really good, He's my number 1 pass rusher in the class, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out my pass rusher rankings, you can check that out. Again, he's very versatile too. He can play that 4-3 defensive end for them, as well as, as he could in a 3-4 scheme. Him across from Danielle Hunter would just be extremely scary for any quarterback. And then you have Michael Pearson between them. That's just really frightening to think about. Their defense obviously was not good by any means last year. So I do think Kwity Paye is a good pick here. Then at 15, we have the Patriots. And this is a pretty easy pick for me because, I just think Mac Jones, it makes a ton of sense. It really does. Mac Jones, when playing at Alabama, a big reason a lot of people are low on Mac Jones is because at Alabama, he played behind an extremely good offensive line with extremely good people to throw to, with an extremely good defense backing him up. First thing I want to say to that is, why didn't people say the same thing about Tua? Mac Jones had the same team as Tua and performed better, first off. But if you look at the Patriots, they have one of the best offensive lines in football. They don't have the best receiving threats in the world, but that can quickly be changed. And they have some young guys with a ton of upside, and their defense is still one of the best in the NFL. Even though they may possibly trade Stephon Gilmore, they do need some help at linebacker and such. They're going to get healthy after the COVID opt-outs, because they were definitely the team that got hit the worst with the COVID opt-outs. They're going to be a really good, healthy team again. And if you get a guy like Mac Jones to man the defense, or man the quarterback for the offense, I think he'd be fantastic there. I think he'd work really well. If anyone's going to get that, top tier potential out of Mac Jones, it's going to be Bill Belichick. I think it makes a lot of sense. And so I think I like this pick. Then at 16, we have the Cardinals, and this is a really easy pick. At this point, I just basically draft the best corner on the board, and the best corner on the board at this point is definitely Jaycee Horn. He's a really solid physical corner from Carolina. I've been pretty high on him for a while, and yeah, it's just really who's the best corner at that spot for the Cardinals. Because if what's his face? Caleb Farley falls there, I always take Caleb Farley here. If Patrick Surtain's here, I always take Patrick Surtain here. Both of them are gone at this point. It's got to be Jaycee Horn. They have Byron Murphy there and no one else. It's really bad, so I think this pick makes the most sense by far. Raiders at 17, they just got to go the best defensive player available, at this point in the draft. And Christian Barmore could be that. I still don't know if he's a first-round guy for me. He's a big-bodied, game wrecker, but it's just that's kind of all he is just that big-bodied, can get back there, If you look at the edge, I'm still not really keen on giving Gregory Rousseau in the first round. He's just way too much of a developmental project for me. I would love Azeez Ojulari here, but I truly think he's strictly a 3-4 outside linebacker, and they run 4-3, obviously, which is why Joseph Asai would make a ton of sense here, as well as like Jalen Phillips, who I think could play that 4-3. JOK is obviously an amazing linebacker here. I don't really think there's any corners or safeties worth taking at this spot. So, I am going to go here with Jalen Phillips. A person that I'm starting to rise back on a bit, and a lot of people are, there's been a lot of talk recently that some people have him as their number one pass rusher in the class, and I get that for sure. Again, if you check out my pass rush rankings, he is number 4, but I say in there, if not for the concussions, he would easily be number 1. In fact, if not for the concussions, this guy would probably be like a top 5 pick. Like this, he's good at literally everything. He has an extremely good power rush. He's extremely fast and athletic as well. He's a very smart player. He's great in the run game. Like, he even makes plays in like the short passing game. Like, this dude is the complete package. The only downside to him is his health concerns. UCLA forced him to quit football and retire because of just how intense his concussions were and how often. He then he went to Miami and then obviously and continued to have an amazing year, especially since like Gregory Rousseau wasn't playing. So I think he's definitely the best player at this point for the Raiders. A really, really talented player. It's just if the health can hold him back in the NFL. If his concussions don't come back at all, which they didn't this last year for Miami, this kid's going to be special in the NFL. If they do hurt him, though, he's probably not going to be that good. Then at 18, we have the Dolphins. And the Dolphins, for a while I wanted to give JOK here. But I'm actually starting to lean with some people and thinking that Zaven Collins is actually the better fit here. What is this? I don't know. That was mad. Zaven Collins makes a lot of sense here. The one concern that a lot of people have with him is just kind of his mental side to the game. He has just some issues when it comes to IQ and just the position as a whole. If anyone can coach that out of him, it's Brian Flores. And not to mention, him on a Miami defense would just be amazing. Besides the mental aspects of the game that are challenging him, this dude is incredibly athletic. He is super quick for a linebacker of his size. And again, just an all-around solid player that I think makes a lot of sense for the Dolphins. And so I like it here. Then Washington at 19, they would have really liked for Mac Jones to fall to them, but it's actually seeming like Taylor Heineke is kind of their guy right now to start. They are my favorite to trade for Sam Darnold, though, so Sam Darnold could be starting for him. But regardless, I do think getting some receiving threats for that offense is needed and would be very helpful to whoever's manning the quarterback position. And a guy that I really, really like for Washington is Kadarius Toney. There's a lot of picks that a lot of people are making right now, but it's just because they make a lot of sense. Kadarius Toney is truly that speed threat. More in his acceleration. He doesn't necessarily have the downfield speed, but he will still beat his corners, 9 times out of 10. Great hands as well. If you just look at how he was with Kyle Pitts and Kyle Trask, he made work with, oftentimes some very inaccurate passes from Kyle Trask. So, he looked really solid this year. I like him a lot. I think it's a solid pick here for Washington. Then the Bears at 20, and the Bears here, although I definitely like guys like Sam Cosmi and Elijah Vera Tucker, which everyone's starting to list him as tackle. I still think he is better at guard, but he can play tackle, I suppose. Rashawn Slater does still make the most sense here. They're possibly cutting both of their starting tackles, and part of Rashawn Slater's draft stock is that he is pretty versatile when it comes to his game. I think everybody, overestimating his ability to play like guard and center too is a bit overreacting, but he can play both sides of the tackle pretty well. And there are aspects to his game that I do like. He obviously didn't let up, a sack in 2 years, which is incredible, obviously. And that was going against guys like, Chase Young. And I see where people like his game. I just think, because of his size and his short arms and the fact that he'll probably end up playing tackle, those speed and power rushers in the NFL, mainly the speed rushers, are really going to destroy this guy. If you put this guy on the outside with, say, like Azeez Ojulari, Bradley Chubb, Bud Dupree, those guys are going to mess up Rashawn Slater in an NFL game. And that's why, he probably transitions better to guard, even though we've never even seen him play at guard. So it's a weird situation. I think for the Bears it makes sense, but I'm just really concerned about him in a lot of those aspects, to where I do think he's probably going to end up being a bust, but this isn't necessarily what I would do. This is just something I could see happening. But the pick makes sense, although I definitely have my concerns about him. Then at 21, we have the Colts, and after getting Carson Wentz, I don't see any other pick here then to go tackle, just the best tackle on the board. A lot of people have Christian Darrisaw here. I don't see how he falls past the Chargers personally. If they take Rashawn Slater there, I'm going to be pretty upset personally, even though it, again, makes sense because they have needs an interior as well, after what I just said. At this point, Sam Cosmi is definitely the best tackle on the board. On a super tall human being. This guy's 6'9" and 270 or something, or he's even heavier, I think, but he's a monster of a human being. You remember Mekhi Becton from last year. He's bigger than Mekhi Becton and probably more athletic too, which is really, really scary. He was solid for Texas this year. At that point, they just have to take the best tackle on the board. That's definitely Sam Cosmi here, so makes sense. Help out Carson Wentz. So Titans at 22. This is a really easy pick for me. It's been the same for a while, but Azeez Ojulari just makes a lot of sense here. I don't know why people have him lasting to like the second round and stuff. This is another guy that's probably going to go a lot higher than people think. I don't know why he doesn't get more attention. I mean, he at Georgia, he was just so dominant, like he was incredibly not only athletic, but the way that this guy uses his combination of size with his power with his speed. If you attack the smaller guys like Rashawn Slater, or if they can get him to go more of the inside, even though I think he is like a 3-4 outside linebacker, I feel like he's going to be phenomenal in the NFL. And I actually think Ojulari is long-term the best pass rusher in this class, except for maybe Jalen Phillips. My comp for him is Von Miller, because he plays pretty much like Von Miller does. And if you compare a guy to like Von Miller, that's really scary. So I like Ojulari. I think he fits with the Titans nicely. I think he'll be a pretty elite pass rusher in the NFL. The Jets at 23. The Jets at this point, there's multiple places they can go. They took their quarterback, obviously, so maybe they want to go receiver here. Rashad Bateman or Terrace Marshall are right there. If they want to get some help at, the offense, because the interior is still not the best. I mean, heck, Elijah Vera Tucker, or maybe even Alex Leatherwood, since I think he transitions better to guard because he's just so sluggish with his feet. If you want to take a guy like Christian Barmore, it makes sense. Even though you already got Quinnen Williams who broke out, you can put Barmore right next to him. If you want to grab a guy like Gregory Rousseau, I think that definitely makes sense. There's just a ton of ways for the Jets to go here. But I do think, especially after giving up Avery Williamson, JOK I think would just be great on that Jets defense. JOK is another guy that's just so hyper athletic and also like just so versatile in his game. He can't play like edge rusher as well as Micah Parsons, but he is definitely better safety as a linebacker, and he even played a good amount of slot corner at Notre Dame. So he is even more versatile in his game in some ways, but still an amazing linebacker, can still rush the quarterback really well. It's a pick that makes sense. He's probably the best player at this point in the draft, so I like the pick there. Steelers at 24. I feel like Steelers just have to go offensive line. Villanueva's probably leaving in free agency. Matt Feeler, I'm pretty sure, is a free agent. Marquise Pouncey retired. Ramon Foster retired last year. David DeCastro is still doing good, but then you have Okafor, who's just not that great of a tackle. You definitely have to address tackle here. And a guy that I think people don't really think is going to go that high, but really could, and someone that just comes out as a Steeler to me, is Jalen Mayfield. I just think he screams the big body guy that they want. Very, very physical. Definitely better in the run game, but they could for sure use help in their run game blocking. This guy screams Steeler to me. I think he fits with them really nicely. And so even though I don't think he's the best tackle on the board, I do think, guys like Vera Tucker, Eichenberg, Redunds, even Spencer Brown are maybe better tackles, but this guy just, again, he just feels like a Steeler to me. Then we have the Jaguars at 25, who took Trevor Lawrence, obviously. For the Jaguars here, if you're wanting to go maybe some offensive line help, there are some great tackles here to make sure you protect Trevor Lawrence. If you want to look defense, Christian Barmore would be a great fit on that defense. They really have no one on that defensive line either, because Kalavon Chason and because they are switching to a 3-4 scheme. And so, your outside linebackers are probably going to be Josh Allen and Kalavon Chason. You got Miles Jack and Joe Sherbert there at the inside linebacker. And their defensive line, I think Adam Gotsis and Al Woods are their starters, and I don't even know who would be their other starter. So I do think defensive line is a good idea to go here, because it needs a lot of help. And there's guys to go here. Jason Owe would play that position really nicely. Gregory Rousseau obviously has a ton of upside. It definitely makes sense here. Joseph Asai makes sense as well, but I do think, I am going to take Christian Barmore in the first round here. I think he makes a lot of sense with the Jaguars. I think he'd fit really nicely with that defense. And again, their defensive line, they could use just that big-bodied game wrecker that Christian Barmore is. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and it would help their defense out a lot. Then we have the Browns at 26, and this is such an easy pick for me. Nick Bolton is easily the pick. the Browns really do not have a lot of holes left on their team. Maybe you want to take a guy like Gregory Rousseau, which definitely makes sense, because if you hit that boom potential on him, you've got Gregory Rousseau and Myles Garrett, which is really, really scary. Although they might sign J.J. Watt, so they might not even need that. Nick Bolton fills out their last kind of hole on their team at that linebacker position, and Nick Bolton is an extremely athletic and speedy dude. And that is where he definitely shines more than anything, is his athleticism and his playmaking ability because of his speed. However, he is still a very consistent dude. Gets in on the run game. He makes his tackles. He's a really solid linebacker that they could really use on that defense. Then we have the Ravens here at 27, and there's two picks for me here for the Ravens. There's more than two picks because the Ravens actually have some big holes. Safety is obviously in consideration here. However, I still don't think that any of these safeties are worth a first-round pick. Safety is a pretty big hole for them. They have a big need at edge rusher because, Yannick Ngakoue is probably leaving. Matt Judon's probably leaving. Derek Wolfe was very inconsistent. Calais Campbell's getting older. And there are still, 3 first-round level guys you can take here. I know people are really high on Ronnie Perkins, but I'm not first-round level on him. But if you're also looking offense, if you want to address that wide receiver position, Rashad Bateman makes sense here, as well as Terrace Marshall. Even Rondale Moore makes sense here. If you want to address the offensive line, Elijah Vera-Tucker is a guy that can play, your guard position as well as tackle, which is 2 needs for them, obviously. If you want to go Wyatt Davis, that makes sense as well. Creed Humphrey also makes sense since their snapping was really bad last year. But I do think that getting an edge rusher is probably still the move here in the first round, especially when you have a guy like Joseph Asai, who is just so versatile because he played all of last year pretty much hand in the dirt, and then the year before that was almost entirely standing up. So he's proved he can be that defensive end and outside linebacker and be pretty good at both. The only problem with Asai is that he's just really, really raw. He still just has a long way to go when it comes to the actual art of pass rushing. However, because of his versatility and their big need at linebacker, I do really like him here to the Ravens. Then at 28, we have the Saints. And, the Saints here normally go with a linebacker, but all 4 of those linebackers are off the board at this point. And although I do really like some of these guys, I don't think they're first rounders. So at that point, if those guys are gone, I feel like the pick either has to be, one of these receivers or a safety. But even though their need at safety is pretty big, they have guys there already. Marcus Williams is leaving, but he sucked anyways. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has shown a lot of good stuff, and you still have Malcolm Jenkins, I think it is. Even though I know he's older, I think it does make more sense to go receiver here. Emmanuel Sanders is probably going to be a cap casualty. So then at that point, you basically only have Jared Cook and Michael Thomas to throw to. And Jared Cook is getting older, and they might actually even trade Michael Thomas. So they're definitely, I feel like receiver is the best pick here if all the linebackers are gone, which in this case they are. And between these guys, even though I think I like Terrace Marshall better, I do like the fit of Rashad Bateman on the Saints a lot more, though. A guy that I'm not very high on personally, his size, combined with the way he plays the position, because he's definitely much more of your downfield jump ball guy. I really don't think mends well with his size. I don't think he's going to get them going much in the short game, which is the short passing game, which is what they like to do. Although having Jameis Winston come in, they're probably going to throw a lot more deep passes. So that does mesh with the way Rashad Bateman plays. So it does make sense. That's the pick here. Then the Packers at 29, and this is a really easy pick for me. And yes, normally I would give Eric Stokes here, and people continue to just fall on him. But I have risen Asante Samuel over Eric Stokes at this point. I always got the love for Asante Samuel. He's been really solid. He's basically Caleb Farley, just not as athletic and not nearly as high of a floor, but he is still a really solid corner. And, after the performance against the Buccaneers, they just have to go with the best corner at that spot, because getting someone across from Jair Alexander, so he's not the only, capable corner on that team, is very important. So I think it makes sense here. Voice is starting to get a little bit raspy. Bills at 30. Bills here, there are some different picks I could go with actually, because Najee Harris makes a ton of sense here. Although I'm starting to kind of, cool on him in the first round. Their run game wasn't that good, besides Josh Allen. But I don't want to give up on Devin Singletary yet, so I don't think that's the move here. If you want to get some offensive line, I think Elijah Vera Tucker is a great fit with the Bills, as well as Dylan Raduns. If you look at the defense, though, Gregory Rousseau is still there, and, I think that's going to be the pick, because when you're a team like that's so just well built as the Bills, where they really don't have any holes besides like maybe linebacker, you can afford to take a guy like Gregory Rousseau, which once again, if he busts for you at the 30, that sounded very wrong. If he does end up being a bust, at the pick of 30, it's not a huge loss because you were willing to take the bet on him and you didn't get it, but you were at least willing to take the bet. Whereas if he does hit that big potential that he does have, this guy is going to be an elite defender in the NFL and would mesh really, really nicely with AJ Epinesa. And having a good Gregory Rousseau with AJ Epinesa for the future would be a really, really scary pairing. So I think it's a pick that makes sense, and I think it's worth the risk. Chiefs at 31. I feel like the Chiefs just have to get some, insurance for the offensive line. That's easily the most notable thing they need to focus on. Mahomes has had his fair amount of smaller injuries. They've been small, obviously, but you don't want that to pile up by any means. And if you're going to go for someone, because the problem wasn't like their interior. A lot of people think it was their interior. They had injuries, which was their problem. They were out their starting left guard all season. They lost their starting center for a good amount of the season. And then both of their starting tackles were out for the Super Bowl. You saw that after losing Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz, their offensive line was much, much worse. And there's actually a decent chance that Mitchell Schwartz might actually be either leaving because they can't pay him, or, apparently this back injury that he sustained is bad enough to where he might actually even quit football. So, here at this spot, you definitely got to get some insurance. And, a guy that I am starting to come around on a bit, and, one that I don't think should still necessarily be a first-round pick, but I do have to understand where people are coming from, is Tevin Jenkins. I get it. I get why a lot of people really like this guy. He is a super big-bodied dude. He rarely lets any power guys past him. The problem with Tevin Jenkins is that he just moves really sluggish to me, and it's something he can fix pretty easily. I fear like what speed rushers are going to do to him again with the speed rusher thing, but it is something he can fix. I do think he'd be much better than Yasir Durant or whoever was their other backup tackle. So this is much more of an insurance pick, but if Mitchell Schwartz does go down, I think you can slot him in at right tackle and he'll be really good still for the Chiefs. So I think it does make sense, and so I like the pick there. And then with the Buccaneers here, normally this is a pick where I take Gregory Rousseau or Jalen Phillips because those are kind of that luxury pick. However, two teams already kind of took that on him because I'm starting to really not think that the concussions are going to be too much of a deal for Jalen Phillips. And, I think the Bills are willing to take that. So for the Buccaneers, if you want to still go for that like defensive approach, I suppose you could go with a guy like Jason Owe. Or I think they will keep Shaq Barrett, though, so I don't think they're going to need a guy like Carlos Basham. I do think the pick here, though, is going to end up being Najee Harris. Najee Harris is easily the number one running back in this class for me. I truly do get, Derrick Henry vibes from him, which is really, really scary because Derrick Henry is, well, we all know what Derrick Henry is. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Derrick Henry by any means, but they're both Alabama running backs that run extremely fast and well for their size and are bruisers. If you can compare him to Derrick Henry, that's really scary. And I think he's better than Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette off the bat. You can help Tom Brady really get a consistent powerful running game, because Rojo and Leonard Fournette were good at times, but they were largely inconsistent. So getting a guy like Najee Harris, I think, makes sense, especially if Gregory Rousseau and Jalen Phillips aren't here. But if either one of those guys are here, I'm definitely taking them over Harris. That was the first round of 2021 NFL mock draft. It's been a while since we've done it, so I thought it'd be fun to do one. I'll be coming out with the second and third rounds tomorrow, like normal, like we used to do. And so, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button. Wow, like button. Might have already said it, but regardless, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see all you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.